A tea, my sister's wedding, she stole my achievements. I paid for everything, medical bills, rent. My parents teared up. You're a saint. Then she smirked. Unlike me, my sir is a total failure. The room erupted in laughter. My hands trembled. But I paid for everything. Then something unexpected happened. On a snowy winter night in Boston, Eleanor Page gazed out of her office window while reviewing the final accounting report. The city lights seen from the 38th floor of the high-rise shone in an orderly fashion, much like her own life. Eleanor had worked at Winslow Financial for 15 years as a senior manager in the accounting department. Her meticulous attention to detail and dedication to her work were well known throughout the company, but tonight her concentration was unusually broken. Working late again? Eleanor, you're such a workaholic. Her colleague Janet was standing in front of her desk, dressed in an elegant outfit, clearly heading to a party. Yes, I'm checking the quarterly financial report. It needs to be on the president's desk by Monday morning, Eleanor answered with a smile. But tonight is Freeman's farewell party. It's a shame you're missing it after being invited, Janet said, looking disappointed. I'm sorry, but I also have a consultation about my father's new treatment. Eleanor's voice trailed off. Janet nodded understandingly and said, I hope your father gets better, before leaving. Eleanor turned back to her screen, but then her phone rang. The screen showed the name Amanda. She took a deep breath before answering. Hey, Elle, I'm at this lovely restaurant with Thomas. His parents are here too. Her sister Amanda's voice was filled with excitement. That sounds wonderful, Eleanor responded gently. So, what do you think about that quote from the wedding planner? I want to change to Weston Gardens. It would look better on Instagram, and Thomas's mom says it would be absolutely perfect. Eleanor quietly looked up at the ceiling. Weston Gardens was one of the most expensive wedding venues in the city. Amanda, we've talked about this before. There's a limit to the budget. Oh, don't be so stingy. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Besides, after everything I've done for Mom and Dad, don't I deserve to splurge a little? Amanda's voice was tinged with dissatisfaction. Eleanor resisted the urge to sigh. 3 years ago, when her father Robert suffered from a serious heart condition, she had covered all the expensive medical treatments that insurance wouldn't pay for. Her mother, Martha, had quit her job to take care of him, so Eleanor was also paying their apartment rent. However, she hadn't told her parents about this. She had said that the insurance company made special arrangements, when in reality she had been dipping into her own savings and investments. All right, Amanda. But let me review the budget one more time before making a final decision, Eleanor said. After hanging up, she sank deeply into her chair with a tired expression. Amanda was pursuing her dream of becoming a fashion designer. She had talent but hadn't yet achieved significant success. Nevertheless, she acted as if she was supporting the family, when in fact, she only sent a small amount of money to their parents each month. Eleanor's smartphone rang again. This time it was a video call from her mother. Good evening, Mom. Eleanor greeted her with a gentle smile. Still working? You're such a hard worker. Martha's face showed a mixture of affection and concern. Amanda said she called you. The wedding preparations must be keeping you busy. Yes, we were just discussing the budget. That girl always has such big dreams, Martha smiled. But she's really a good daughter. Last week she sent money for your father's new medication. She told us, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Eleanor maintained her composure. That medication money had actually been paid by her. Amanda had always claimed Eleanor's financial help as her own. How is Dad feeling? Eleanor changed the subject. He's getting better. Really, if Amanda hadn't found that specialist? Martha's eyes welled up with tears. Eleanor remained silent. She was the one who had found the specialist and paid the expensive initial consultation fee. She simply nodded and said, That's good to hear. After the call ended, Eleanor took a family photo from her desk drawer. It showed her parents, herself, and Amanda. As she traced her finger over the photo, she wondered why she didn't tell the truth. Why did she allow Amanda's lies? The answer was simple. She wanted to preserve family peace. Amanda had always been the parents' favorite, while Eleanor had settled into the role of the responsible older sister. Exposing Amanda's deception might hurt her parents. Especially now, her father's health was the top priority. Eleanor received a message on her smartphone. It was from Thomas Wilson, Amanda's fiancé. Eleanor, do you have time tomorrow afternoon? There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Eleanor was a bit surprised. She had only met Thomas a few times and had never received a personal message from him before. He was an investment banker from a wealthy family. He seemed polite and sincere, yet quite the opposite of Amanda in personality. Of course. How about 2 p.m.? Eleanor replied. While thinking about tomorrow's meeting, Eleanor finished the final report. The clock had already passed 10 p.m. She could have been considered for a promotion, but since her father's illness, she had repeatedly turned down positions that required business trips and overtime, all to be there for her family. Outside, the snow was falling heavily. Eleanor put on her coat and left the office. On her way back to her apartment, she called her grandmother Edna. Her grandmother was the only person in the family who knew about Eleanor's sacrifices. "Grandma, can you talk now?" "Eleanor, I was just doing some knitting." Her grandmother's warm voice came through the phone. "Amanda's wedding preparations have started," Eleanor said. "I see. Is she still taking credit for your sacrifices?" Edna's voice carried a reproachful tone. "It can't be helped. As long as everyone is happy. But what about you? Eleanor, you need to care for your own life too." Her grandmother's voice was filled with concern. Eleanor stopped walking and sat on a snow-covered park bench. "I'm fine. It's just, sometimes I get tired. Having to stay strong all the time. The truth will eventually come to light, Eleanor. And sometimes, that truth comes in unexpected ways," Edna said quietly. Eleanor looked up at the snowy sky, pondering her grandmother's words. Amanda's wedding was just a month away. Under the sparkling chandeliers at the bridal shop, Amanda was trying on a wedding dress. Wrapped in pure white, she truly looked beautiful. Tears welled up in Martha's eyes as she repeated, "You look like an angel." Eleanor smiled quietly while continuing her calculations as she looked over sample invitations. "Eleanor, look, isn't this tiara gorgeous?" Amanda placed a dazzlingly jeweled tiara on her head. "It's only $3,800, can I get it?" Eleanor frowned. "Amanda, we're already over budget. We've exceeded the initial estimate by more than $20,000. "Oh, Elle, you're so stingy. This is my special day." Amanda pouted and looked to her mother for support. Martha looked at Eleanor with a confused expression. "Can't we stretch the budget a little, considering everything Amanda has done for us?" Eleanor felt a pang in her chest. What Amanda had supposedly done for her parents was built on lies about Eleanor's own sacrifices. Nevertheless, she quietly took a deep breath and said, "All right, I'll figure something out." That night, Eleanor liquidated more of her mutual funds, dipping into money she had set aside for her own future. Her dream of buying a condominium, which she had been planning for years, became even more distant. 2 weeks before the wedding, Eleanor was accompanying her father to an appointment with his primary physician. Robert's condition was stable but still required attention. As they left the examination room, a man stood up from the waiting area. It was Thomas. "Hello, Eleanor?" He politely extended his hand. "Thomas? Why are you here?" Eleanor was surprised. "Actually, I came to check on Robert's condition. I was worried that the stress of the wedding might affect him." Thomas's eyes showed genuine concern. "That's very thoughtful of you." Eleanor thanked him but found it strange. Amanda shouldn't have told Thomas much about her father's condition. When they moved to a nearby cafe, Thomas carefully began asking questions. "Eleanor, I hope I'm not being rude, but how have Robert's medical expenses been handled these past 3 years?" Eleanor hesitated for a moment. "Insurance and some special programs," Thomas nodded quietly. "Amanda told me she was covering most of it." Eleanor went pale. She was uncertain how to respond. Telling the truth might damage Amanda and Thomas's relationship. However, lying went against her nature. "The details are complicated," she finally said. "What matters is that my father is receiving the best treatment." Thomas stared at her intently. "I understand, thank you." There was a flicker of something in his eyes. At the rehearsal dinner the day before the wedding, the luxurious terrace of Weston Gardens was bathed in the sunset, glowing pink and gold. Relatives and close friends gathered, chatting with champagne glasses in hand. Amanda, dressed in a shimmering salmon-pink dress, was smiling happily. "Everyone, these are my parents. My father suffered a serious illness 3 years ago, but he is recovered enough to attend my wedding today." The gathered people applauded warmly, and Amanda continued, "This was all possible because I worked hard to ensure he received the best treatment. Sometimes I was juggling my design work with 3 part-time jobs." Eleanor froze. She knew Amanda lied, but she never expected her to do so boldly in public. She quietly put down her champagne glass and moved to a corner of the terrace. "Eleanor?" A voice came from behind her. It was George Wilson, Thomas's father. A dignified lawyer whose gray hair matched his well-fitted tuxedo. "Your sister is quite remarkable. It's rare to find someone who would sacrifice so much for their family." Eleanor forced a smile. "Yes, Amanda is special. You must be very proud. How fortunate to have such a dedicated person in your family." Eleanor's lips trembled. "Actually, Uncle George," Amanda suddenly interrupted. "Thomas's mom is looking for you. She wants to discuss the interior design of the new house." She gave Eleanor a quick glance before leading George away. Eleanor let out a deep sigh. Looking up at the twilight sky, she saw the first star beginning to shine. She walked toward the table where her grandmother Edna was sitting. "Are you all right?" Edna asked, seeing her granddaughter's expression. "Yes, it's the usual," Eleanor answered. "I'm just afraid that Amanda's lies keep getting bigger. She will have to face the consequences of her actions, Edna said with wise eyes. When the time comes, the truth will be revealed. But when? Eleanor whispered. Tomorrow is her special day. I don't want to ruin anything. Her grandmother quietly held Eleanor's hand. In life, there are things you can choose, and things you cannot. All we can do is watch and wait. That night, back in her hotel room, Eleanor stood by the window gazing at the stars. Tomorrow, her sister would take a new step in life. She silently prayed, may this wedding end peacefully. And when the truth eventually comes to light, may our family bonds remain intact. Weston Gardens was adorned with blooming white roses and pale pink orchids, filled with 400 guests. The ceremony went perfectly, and Amanda radiated in her wedding dress. As the evening reception began, champagne and hors d'oeuvres were served continuously. Eleanor, dressed in a light blue gown as the maid of honor, maintained a gentle smile. Though complex emotions stirred within her, she was determined to celebrate her sister's special day. It's time for the speeches, the host announced with microphone in hand. First, we'll hear from the bride's sister, Eleanor Page. Eleanor took a deep breath and accepted the microphone. Amanda, Thomas, I sincerely congratulate you on your new beginning, she began calmly. As a sister, I've watched Amanda grow. Her passion and determination have always amazed me. Thomas, you found a wonderful partner. I believe you will make Amanda happy. Warm applause rose from the audience as Eleanor quietly returned to her seat. Next, fathers from both families and friends gave their speeches. Finally, Amanda herself stood up. She took the microphone with a beautiful smile. Thank you all for coming today, Amanda said with a radiant smile. I especially want to thank my parents. Dad, Mom, thank you for always believing in me and supporting me. Her parents smiled with tears in their eyes. But there's something you all don't know yet. Amanda suddenly changed her tone, assuming a dramatic expression. 3 years ago, my father suffered from a serious heart condition. We needed expensive medical treatment that insurance wouldn't cover, and Mom had to quit her job. Eleanor froze. She understood with terrifying clarity where Amanda was heading with this. At that time, I made a decision. Tears welled up in Amanda's eyes. Eleanor knew they were staged tears. For these 3 years, I paid for everything: Dad's medical bills, their rent. Sometimes I couldn't even sleep at night, but I kept going because it was for my family. Murmurs of surprise spread through the venue. Her parents were even more moved, with Martha beginning to cry out loud. You're truly a saint, our angel. Eleanor took a sip of water to hide her distress. Her hands were trembling. Across the table she could see her grandmother Edna's expression suddenly turning stern. Thank you. But I only did what was natural for my family, Amanda continued with false modesty. Then suddenly her gaze turned to Eleanor. But my sister Eleanor is quite the opposite. The venue fell silent. She works for a big corporation, but never lifted a finger to help the family. Always making excuses about being busy, Amanda sneered. She's really a good-for-nothing, isn't she? She added with a laugh. The venue filled with tense laughter. The blood drained from Eleanor's face. Her parents looked at Eleanor with confused expressions. Thomas frowned, clearly showing his discomfort. Something crumbled inside Eleanor. She felt the wall of patience and sacrifice she had built over the years collapsing. She slowly stood up, but her voice trembled. I was the one paying for everything. The venue fell completely silent. A smile momentarily vanished from Amanda's face before she quickly tried to recover. Elle, you can't take a joke. Today is my day. Don't be selfish, I paid for everything. Eleanor's voice grew slightly stronger. For 3 years I've been paying for Dad's treatment and our parents' rent using my savings and investments. You only send a small amount of money each month and falsely claimed it as your achievement. Amanda's face turned bright red. Liar. You don't have any proof. The venue began to stir in confusion. Robert and Martha looked at their daughters in astonishment. Suddenly, Thomas stood up and took the microphone. The venue fell silent again. I'm sorry, but I must speak the truth. His voice was calm, but determination shone in his eyes. Before getting married, I conducted an investigation to understand the family's financial situation. What I discovered was Thomas pulled out a file. What Eleanor is saying is true. The color drained from Amanda's face. Thomas, even you. Grandmother Edna also slowly stood up. I've known the truth all along. Her voice had a strength that belied her age. Eleanor is the real angel. She has protected her family without boasting about her contributions. The room fell completely silent, with all eyes on Amanda. She tried to say something with trembling lips, but no words came out. Eleanor had mixed feelings. She hadn't wanted the truth to come out in this way, yet she also felt a strange sense of liberation. She no longer needed to hide the truth she had concealed for years. Thomas slowly turned to Eleanor, looking at her with respectful eyes. Please continue, Eleanor. Now is the time to tell everything. Eleanor took a deep breath. feeling a new courage welling up inside her. There was no turning back now. In the heavy silence, Eleanor raised her face. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on her. Thomas stood beside her, smiling supportively. Eleanor, this file contains records of all payments made over the past 3 years, Thomas said, addressing the audience. I investigated Amanda's financial situation before our marriage. That's when I discovered some surprising facts. Thomas displayed slides showing neatly arranged bank records and scanned receipts. All of Robert Page's premium medical expenses, special treatments, specialist fees, and the rent for their parents' apartment were actually paid by Eleanor, Thomas stated matter-of-factly. Murmurs arose from the audience. Her parents looked incredulous. Amanda did indeed send a few $100s monthly, Thomas continued. However, that amounts to only about 10% of the total. Eleanor covered more than 90% of the expenses. Amanda sat with a pale face. Thomas, why are you embarrassing me? Her voice trembled. Thomas answered gently but firmly. Amanda, I love you. That's precisely why I don't want to start our marriage on lies. If we don't clear everything up today, we have no future. He looked at Eleanor. Please continue. Eleanor took a deep breath and accepted the microphone. The room fell completely silent. I didn't do it to be recognized, she began quietly. I just wanted to help my family. When Dad collapsed, I had savings. I had been planning to buy an office for my promotion, but that could wait. Dad's life couldn't. Eleanor looked toward her parents. Mom, Dad, I didn't want to worry you, so I said it was a special program from the insurance company. In reality, it was my savings and investments. Amanda did help a little, but it's a lie. Amanda suddenly stood up. It's all her lies. I worked 3 jobs. Amanda, Thomas quietly interrupted. Bank records don't lie. Martha stood up with a shocked expression. Amanda, why did you lie? I didn't lie. Amanda began to cry. I did my best too. Eleanor is always perfect, always praised. I wanted to be recognized too. An uncomfortable atmosphere filled the venue. Eleanor felt Amanda's pain. She quietly adjusted the microphone. Today, all I want is the truth, Eleanor said calmly. Not to blame anyone, but to live honestly. Amanda, you're my sister. I understand your desire to be recognized, but taking credit for someone else's sacrifice and contributions is wrong. Robert removed his glasses with trembling hands. I didn't know anything. His voice shook. Eleanor, why didn't you tell us? Dad's recovery was the top priority. Eleanor answered gently. And to be honest. She hesitated for a moment. You and Mom have always given Amanda special treatment. I felt that no matter what I did, I could never match Amanda's brilliance. So I chose not to say anything. Tears flowed from Martha's eyes. Eleanor, she was at a loss for words. Grandmother Edna slowly stood up and stood next to Eleanor. I have witnessed Eleanor's struggles. She declined promotion opportunities many times, used her savings meant for her future, and never uttered a word of complaint. She did this out of love, but I cannot overlook someone else taking credit for her sacrifice. Amanda collapsed into her chair, covering her face with her hands. I am ashamed. Her voice was hoarse. Thomas carefully sat next to Amanda. His expression showed not anger but deep sadness. Why didn't you tell me the truth? Because I wanted you to love me, Amanda answered in a small voice. Your family is wealthy and respectable. I felt inadequate. So I wanted you to think that at least I had something to be proud of. Thomas sighed. I wanted to love you for who you are, not for lies or pretenses. Eleanor quietly stepped forward. I revealed everything today not to hurt Amanda, she said with a serious expression. I want us to move forward as a family, standing on truth. Amanda, I love you. You are talented, passionate, and a wonderful sister. You don't need lies or pretenses. Martha and Robert stood up and approached Eleanor. I'm sorry, Eleanor, Robert said with a trembling voice. To think you did so much for us, and we didn't notice. We took you for granted, Martha said tearfully. Our reliable eldest daughter, always dependable. But we never considered how much you were sacrificing behind the scenes. Eleanor embraced her parents. Years of suppressed emotions were released, and tears flowed from her eyes. Amanda slowly stood up. Her makeup was ruined by tears, but there was something new in her expression. She approached Eleanor with trembling legs and knelt before her. Eleanor? I'm truly sorry, her voice choked. I kept lying because I wanted to prove my worth. But that was wrong. Taking credit for your sacrifices is unforgivable. Eleanor raised Amanda up and embraced her. Amanda, you have value just as you are. You don't need lies or pretenses. Thomas slowly approached the two. Amanda, I still want to marry you, he said quietly, but from now on, I want to build our relationship on honesty and truth. The people at the venue were breathless at this unexpected turn of events. Some were wiping away tears. Everyone felt they were witnessing not just a wedding reception, but a moment of truth for a family. Grandmother Edna placed her hand on Eleanor's shoulder. The truth always comes to light eventually, and today is that day. Eleanor nodded. She felt the burden that had weighed on her heart for years becoming lighter. No more lies or pretenses. The family would now take a new step forward. The host awkwardly took the microphone. Well then, to celebrate the new beginning of these two. Thomas said calmly, "Today didn't go as planned, but this is part of our lives. I think it's rather meaningful as the start of a marriage that values honesty and truth." He took Amanda's hand, and she timidly responded. Eleanor sensed that while there were wounds between them, they were wounds that could heal. The reception quietly resumed. On the surface it continued as a normal wedding reception, but everyone present felt they had witnessed an important turning point. That concludes Melissa's report. The numbers for the fourth quarter are quite impressive. Eleanor smiled at the head of the conference table. Her new office was on the 42nd floor of Winslow Financial, with a panoramic view of Boston. 6 months after the wedding, she had finally been promoted to vice president of the finance division. As the meeting ended, Eleanor checked her watch. There was still plenty of time to visit her parents. She put on her coat and left the office. On a March afternoon with melting snow and hints of spring, Eleanor rang the doorbell of her parents' apartment. Her father Robert opened the door. His complexion was good, clearly showing he had regained his health. "Eleanor," he warmly embraced his daughter. Perfect timing. Everyone's waiting. In the living room, Martha was preparing dinner, Grandmother Edna was relaxing on the sofa, and Amanda and Thomas were there too. Amanda stood up and hugged her sister. She was dressed more simply than before, and her expression had softened. Many things had changed since that night. Her parents, now aware of Eleanor's sacrifices, expressed deep gratitude while apologizing for their years of unconscious bias. Amanda had started therapy, seriously addressing her self-worth issues. She and Thomas had a small family-only ceremony the week after the wedding. "Can I see your new work?" Eleanor asked Amanda. Amanda smiled and took out her sketchbook. She had started her fashion brand on a small scale, and was now aiming for success through genuine skill. "It's still small, but I'm getting real customers." "That's wonderful," Eleanor said sincerely. The sisters' relationship had been gradually repaired, creating an even closer bond than before. "Dinner's ready," Martha called out. She had changed too. Her approach to her daughters had become more equal, and she now seriously listened to Eleanor's work and achievements. As they sat at the table, Robert cleared his throat. "Actually, today is a special day. We want to celebrate Eleanor's promotion and Amanda's first commercial design being accepted." The parents looked proudly at both daughters. Gone was the one-sided favoritism of before. They now celebrated each daughter's success equally. Grandmother Edna raised her champagne glass. "The courage to acknowledge mistakes, forgive, and stand on truth is what strengthens a family," she said with wise eyes. "We have learned from our failures and built better relationships." Everyone clinked glasses. Eleanor and Amanda exchanged glances and smiled quietly at each other. There was no shadow of former competition or jealousy. What remained was mutual understanding and respect. Thomas held Amanda's hand. Their relationship too had been rebuilt on honesty. "Actually, we have one more announcement," he smiled. "We're having a baby." Cheers erupted, and words of blessing were offered. Eleanor felt genuinely happy. She herself had recently started dating Michael from the legal department of her company. Life was full of new possibilities. As the sky began to turn sunset red, Eleanor stepped out onto the balcony. The pain and sacrifices of the past weren't completely gone, but they had strengthened her and made her appreciate her current happiness more deeply. Thinking alone, her grandmother stood beside her. "Yes, I was thinking about how everything has changed," Eleanor answered. "Truth has the power to liberate," Edna said quietly. Eleanor nodded. She understood that sometimes the most unexpected events bring about the most necessary changes.